Other than maximum, we have option A. That leaves 100% of your pension to the beneficiary. And it increases back to maximum if the beneficiary happens to die first. We'll go into more detail on that. If you didn't want to leave 100%, you could consider option B 75%, or option C 50%, or even option D 25% to the beneficiary. All of those lettered options, A, B, C, and D, increase back to maximum. You may have heard the term pop-up options used. People call them by that name. That's what these options are. They increase back to maximum or pop back up to maximum if the beneficiary dies first in retirement. A, B, C, and D have a joint and survivor benefit. There's a lifetime benefit for you. If the beneficiary is living at the time of your death, they get the option that you selected for them. But if the beneficiary happens to die before you, once you're retired, your retirement goes back up to the maximum amount. There is a reduction in your pension to pick an option for a beneficiary. We'll talk about that later. But that's what they're saying, you go back to maximum. So for the rest of the time you survive that beneficiary, your pension is back up to the maximum amount. You can name one beneficiary for these options, and the beneficiary can never be changed once your retirement becomes effective. Option 1, compared to the way the other options work, is rather unique. Option 1, there is a reduction down from maximum. That's based upon your age. There's a lifetime monthly payment to you, and there may be a lump sum payment to a beneficiary. Maybe is the key here, because it's not guaranteed. It sets up a reserve that's reduced each month by the amount of your pension allowance. And if there's any balance in that reserve at the time you die, that gets paid to the beneficiary. You can name more than one beneficiary under option 1. And this is the only one where you could ever change that beneficiary. Now, the reserve, what they call the reserve, is, if you think of it as a pot of money, that, depending on when you die, that goes to the beneficiary. But every month you collect your pension check, that comes off or out of the reserve. So every month that reserve keeps going lower and lower and lower. Normally, for most people, if I had to find out at what point the reserve would be down to 0 here, for the people in this room, I would say around 9 or 10 years. But it's a continually declining reserve each month. Options 2, 3, and 4 provide the joint survivor benefit, lifetime benefit for you, the member. Beneficiaries living at the time of your death, they get the option that you selected. But if the beneficiary happens to die before you in retirement, you continue to get the allowance you were receiving. You don't go back or increase back to maximum. The pop-ups don't apply under 2, 3, and 4. And this also, you can never change the beneficiary after retirement. Option 2 has the permanent reduction. It's the 100% option, joint survivor benefit. Payment for you, beneficiaries living at your death, they get the 100% of your allowance. One beneficiary, never change the beneficiary. Option 2 is like A that we talked about. They're both 100%, but A is the pop-up, 2 does not pop up. Option 3 is the 50% joint survivor benefit. Payment for you, beneficiary living at your death, they get the 50% of your allowance, or half of that. One beneficiary, never change the beneficiary. And 3 is like C. 3 does not pop up, C would. Option 4 provides a little flexibility in terms of the option amounts. There's a lifetime benefit for you and a benefit for a beneficiary if they're living at the time of your death. And under option 4, if you had the need to pick more than one beneficiary, you could name more than one or name multiple beneficiaries. You cannot change those beneficiaries, and this does not pop up. So perhaps, maybe you had a brother and a sister, maybe you wanted to name them as a beneficiary and leave them a piece, maybe you didn't have a spouse. You could name more than one beneficiary. So to summarize the options that provide for a beneficiary, maximum, there's no payment to a pension benefit to a beneficiary. A lump sum comes in under option 1. 100% allowance would be under A and 2. 75% under B and 4. 50% under C, 3 or 4. 25% under D or 4. Questions on the options? Okay. This slide is an example of the option reduction table. Now, if we think about maximum, which does not provide for a beneficiary, and we talked about the amount that's generated under maximum. If you're thinking of providing for a beneficiary, there's a reduction that I told you. The reduction depends on how much are you choosing to leave the beneficiary upon your death, 100% versus 50%. And ages factor into that because there's an actuarial calculation involved in the reduction. If the beneficiary is considerably younger than you, actuarially, they're going to live longer after your death, and that's factored into the reduction. This shows the reductions under option A. There are different reduction tables for each option. And this is the 100% option A. And it shows you the reduction under the pop-up or the one that does not. Because to select the pop-ups, there is a slight additional reduction. This shows, let's say the member, look at the first chart, age 60. So go all the way over to age 60. And let's say the beneficiary is 55, so come down to 55 and 60, you will see the reduction under option A is 0.830. Under option 2 that doesn't pop up, it's 840. So it costs you an additional 1% reduction for the 100% pop-up. Now what does that 830 mean? Let's go back to the formula. We're going to take your years, divide by 55, times the final average salary. So if we go back to what I had showed you in the reduction, 35 divided by 55 times $100,000, that would be maximum. And you have to take 0.830 of that and reduce the pension 17% to find the option A amount.